Welcome to the 11th episode of the Discover Bittensor podcast. Well, a lot has happened these recent weeks in terms of protocol changes, and I want to go over all these changes, not in too much detail because they are really technical, and this show is meant for curious people who are beginners, basically. So, not for AI nerds, if you like. So, I'm just going to give my general take of these changes and what it means for the Bittensor ecosystem. So, what has happened? Well, we've seen lots of very strong subnets, let's say the top 10 subnets, going down pretty dramatically, or at least pretty severely, those recent 2 months, I guess. And I'm talking about, for example, shoots. I talked about shoots in the last podcast, I believe, or I believe so. But even other things like Targan, Hippias, many quality, let's say top 10, top 20 subnets have basically done nothing but going down. And this was pretty frustrating, I think, to many people in the Bittensor ecosystem, because most people, they know which subnets are high quality, or at least have teams we can trust. And on the other hand, we've seen many subnets without any known or doxed subnet owners doing basically nothing, having a 100% miner burn, meaning they basically don't use the funds that Bittensor provides to fund the miners. And we've seen actually lots of these subnets going up this year, which is actually pretty ridiculous, because the whole idea about DTAO, which is this free market of subnets, is that the market should basically decide which subnets provide real intelligence and value, and those are the subnets that should get emissions or injections. So for beginners, what this means is the following. The Bittensor chain basically provides tau emissions or injections, depending on who you're talking to. And imagine your subnet like Targan, and you get emissions by the chain. Then it basically deepens your liquidity pool, meaning your price is more stable, and it can even help your price to go up. And with the tau flow change, which happened in, I believe, October or November 2025, there was a change to how the protocol actually decides which subnets deserve emissions and which don't. And very simply put, what it meant was the following. Subnets with net staking inflow, they get rewarded. And this means that, for example, if you as a subnet, you buy your own token, or you have people staking their tau into a subnet, then that counts as an inflow. And if there's more inflow than outflow. And how does outflow happen? Outflow happens when, for example, miners from subnet Targan, they immediately sell their token because they need to pay themselves, for example. And if this outflow is higher than the inflow, then basically the subnet price goes down. And on the other hand, if there's a lot of inflow, then the subnet price can go up. And as an investor, it's your mission to find those subnets that you think are useful and will create real value. And in an ideal world, those subnets deserve the most tau emissions, and their price should go up. Like, this is how it's meant to be, basically. But this is not what's been happening those last couple of months. And basically, Cons, or Jacob Steves, the co-founder of Bittensor, he changed how the protocol decides which subnet deserves emissions. So it's pretty complicated, but what's changed now is that it's not just tau flow. So it's also based on what's happening with the miner emissions, and and it's also about the price. And basically, if I can be blunt, what it means is that those subnets that have a higher price, they will benefit very likely. And I also think that there will be many subnets which do actually buy back and burns or just buybacks of their own subnet token will benefit as well. Why? Because when you buy your subnet token right now, your price goes up, and as your price goes up, it's one of the parameters that basically decides if or not, if not, you get emissions by the chain. So very simply put, if, for example, your Targon or Shoots or Liam with quite some revenue, it's very likely that with this new system, it will benefit you. Well, it's very early. This change was made like last week, so it's very early. But the first results look promising. We can see the actual data on taustats.io, for example, and we see that many high-quality subnets suddenly have received a lot of emissions, whilst others, let's say the scammer subnets, they haven't received any emissions. And by the way, this is also due to another change. Basically, Const stopped the emissions to scammer, or let's say to subnets which burn all of their minor emissions. And I believe there are other criteria as well. But what it means is this: we are trying to get to a decentralized marketplace for intelligence. That's the goal. But it's very hard to get there, and we're still very early. So at this moment, there's still a lot of centralization. And this was a very centralized decision from, I believe, Const or the Open Tensor Foundation to change how the protocol works. I personally think this is a very good thing because, as I said, we're so early, and it's such a waste to basically support all these scammers, because there are many, like I would say at least 50 subnets or so that are absolutely that are complete scammers, and they don't do anything, and they get basically paid by the network and they cash out. So this is a pretty annoying issue, which is very logic. It makes sense. It's there because it's a permissionless blockchain. And so we'll always have to deal with scammers. And this is also not just a bad thing, because it also makes us forced to think about solutions to this. But it's an ever-evolving journey, I would say. And I'm personally pretty happy that Const showed some leadership and he implemented these changes. Then there's another thing, and this is also very impactful. It's not live yet, but Const very strongly emphasized that this is really what he wants to implement in the near future. And this is called Root Reborn, and it's a proposal to basically change what happens with the staking rewards on subnet 0 root. Because for those who don't know, you have subnet 0, which is called root, and up until today, you basically get free tau. At this moment, it's like 8% APY. So if you stake, let's say, 10 tau for 1 year, you can expect maybe 0.8 tau that you receive basically for free or for supporting the network. But basically, this tau doesn't really do that much, to be blunt. And there's another problem, because under the hood, the validators that you stake with, they actually receive subnet tokens, and then they have to convert these subnet tokens to tau. So they sell the subnet tokens in order to give you, as a staker, your tau. And the issue is this: you basically have a constant, I believe it's about 1,000 tau sell pressure every single day because of this automatic conversion to tau. And Const argues that it would be much better if, instead of doing this, the validators would actually select baskets, or they would compose baskets of subnets they believe in. And then what's happening is this. So you stake your tau, and they basically stake your tau into these different subnets. They collect the rewards, the subnet tokens, and they keep them, basically. This is simplified. It's a bit more complex, but this is a simplified version. And you can still get your tau, but you have to manually claim it. And at this moment, basically, this is not what happens. At this moment, you automatically basically get your tau. So in theory, this will reduce the sell pressure, because many people will probably be pretty happy to see their tau stack grow, and they won't cash out every single day. That's, I think, the idea behind it. So, and it's very complex, and I won't go into all the details, and there's also a lot of fair critique and suspicion about the potential negative consequences of this proposal. There's a risk of some kind of corruption, but it's very complex, and this is not for this podcast. If you want more information, you can find it in other places. But I think, again, we have to see how it plays out. It's not implemented yet, and they're still testing it. But I do believe the idea is good, because tau, the value of tau, should come from the subnets, in my opinion. And tau is basically like the S&P 500, and it's only valuable because of all the stocks, or the companies, or the subnets in this case, that basically make up the S&P 500 or the tau ecosystem. So if all of the high quality subnets, they only go down in price, it doesn't make any sense that the tau token goes up in price, in my opinion. So I think this is a step in a good direction. Let's see how it plays out. But I am very happy with it, and I'm very curious also to see which subnets are going to be chosen by those validators like Yuma, which itself incubates many different subnets like Niome, Red Team, Bitsec, Score, and I believe some more. And so I think this is a very exciting, at least from a curiosity perspective, phase of Bittensor. And a lot of volatility can happen. We really have to see how this plays out. But yeah, as I said this last week, like, Bittensor is very early, and it's like this roller coaster. If you don't like this, this is not for you. It's as simple as that. Or, and this is another thing, just don't stake your tau into subnets. Just keep it in root. So you're not exposed to all this high volatility that occurs in the subnet market. So I think that's a very quick recap of all the important, or most important stuff that happened. And I really encourage you to go and read the blog posts that Cons published on X about all these changes. I think he's made some very good arguments, and it's great to see that he really tries to explain everything to the community, and also to take into account critique from the community. And I'm just very excited about all of this. But yeah, so what I expect, and this is my interpretation, and let's see, for example, 1 year, when looking back at this podcast, if it's come true or not. I think that what Cons is trying to do is to create the right conditions so that the high quality subnets like Shoot, Targan, Liam, Hippias, all these top quality subnets, they benefit, meaning their price, their token benefits, and it stops going down. As mentioned in an earlier podcast, it's pretty strange to see the Shoots token just nuking, absolutely nuking, even though the business is going very well, which is strange. But it's very early, and maybe on the long run, it's like a glimpse, is like nothing. This dip, which does seem pretty significant, but hey. And I also heard something interesting from Cons. He said, like, in a matter of, I don't know how many months or years, the sum of subnet prices will be, for example, 5, and right now it's 1.4. And so he actually really thinks that this is what's going to happen. And what this means is very interesting, because it could mean, if we get a Pareto distribution, that 20% of the subnets capture 80% of the value. And that means that, let's say, the top 10, top 20 of subnets, they must have very high prices. And right now, the highest price subnet is still Shoot with, I believe, 0.74 or so. 0.074 tau. But I think in his mind, it makes sense for those quality subnets to have a value of maybe 0.3, 0.5, maybe even 1. I don't know what he thinks exactly, but at least much higher than they are right now. And I think many people, many investors, they think that this will happen. I still, as I mentioned in the earlier podcast, I'm still a bit skeptical, because, as I said, there are subnets buying back the token, and the market still says, well, your price is way too high. So, as I said in earlier episodes, all these subnets, why wouldn't it be possible that they all have a price that's 2 or 3 times lower without any relative changes to each other? I think this wouldn't necessarily really impact the ecosystem that much. It does impact it, of course, a bit, because miners get paid way less. But hey, no one knows what's going to happen in the future. And I do believe that many very intelligent people who have this thesis that the prices must go up of the high quality subnets, they should be right in the future. So let's see. But yeah, to be honest, it's just one big unknown in my opinion. But if you listen carefully to what these people say, and if you think about what these protocol changes mean, it does make sense that high quality subnets, again, Score, Target, Shoots, etc., they should go up, especially, and I think this is especially encouraging for the revenue generating businesses that use their revenue to buy back the token, because and also for the lower price subnets like Tau or Red Team or Yanes, because they have revenue and they use the revenue to buy back their token. Every time they do this, they increase their price, which basically stimulates Tau flow, which basically helps them get Tau injected into their pool, and which basically deepens their liquidity and increases their price. So yeah, it seems like this is more closely aligned to how a system like this should be. And some people, they say like, hey, look at how the stock market works. Some businesses, they buy back their stocks, and also with the desired effect to make their price go up. And we might see the same thing with subnets right now. And I encourage you all to basically have a look into subnets like Targon, Shoots, Liam, and their revenue, because some of them, their revenue is pretty impressive. And if they use their revenue, it should really make their price go up with this new system, in my opinion. So I'm very, very excited to see how this plays out over the following months. And I'm really, really curious if, let's say, end of this year, if, for example, the big subnets like Lim, Shoots, and Target, if they are still hovering around the same price they are right now, or if they are lower or higher. And I tend to think that they will be higher. But again, I have no clue. Like, no one really knows for sure. So, well, it doesn't really provide you with much advice, I imagine. But that's also not the goal. The goal is not to give financial advice. It's just to make you guys understand Bittensor a little bit better, and maybe to also feed your curiosity and to make you want to explore it even more, because there's a lot of very interesting material, like resources, available online. And for those who are interested in all these different technical changes, I highly encourage you to look up those resources. Then I want to close just talking a little bit about the average, the general state of Bittensor and the price. Like I was thinking about this the other day. I think it's just terribly undervalued. And you have to know this. I don't even know when it was. I think 2024 or 2023, but I think 2024, the price of Tau went to 750, something like that. And right now it's at 200. And if you see what's been built on Bittensor and how Bittensor has grown since, the price doesn't reflect at all this growth, all this improvement. And it's very simple. You know why? Because it's just treated as another crypto project, and because apparently Bitcoin nukes and every other project should nuke with it. That's why the price is so low. So in my opinion, it doesn't make any sense. And I think it's just an amazing opportunity for people who believe in Bittensor in the long term to accumulate it before, God knows when, it will take off. Many people say that the crypto winter should end in Q4, October or so of this year, because it's always done that. Well, maybe it will, but God knows when Tau will finally take off. Maybe someday this summer people will open up to what it is. Maybe it will still take a few more years. Maybe never. I hope not, but it's very interesting. And I'm just very curious how we are going to look back at this period of time where people who believe in Bittensor like me, they see all the value that's created, and independent of a bear market in crypto. And as Konst said, bear markets are the best places to build because all the scammers, all the bad people, they're gone. And only the builders are left. And so it's very encouraging also, I think, and also very important to understand who is still in Bittensor, which subnets, independently of the Tau price, are still building. And those are the subnets and the teams that deserve our support, I think. So I hope you learned something about the recent developments. Again, for more detailed information on all these technical upgrades, I highly recommend you to, for example, listen to Mark Jeffries' podcast, Hash Rate, or to read Const or Jacob Steve's articles. So that's it for now. I wish you a great day. Bye bye.